I've always wanted to share this story because it brings fear into my heart every time I think about it. It was in northern Arizona. I was with 6 other people and we were driving to go snowboarding. In an instant, the car in front of us slammed on their brakes. Our driver gasped in horror, catching everyone's attention. A massive spacecraft blew through the tree line. A huge disc-like object with a swell of multicolored engines was bending the tree line. Everyone kept saying, "Do you see it?" In an instant, it warped and disappeared into the sky. We drove for 3 hours in complete silence. After getting to our destination, we were staying in Pine Top, an old wood cabin. Everyone had fallen asleep, but I just couldn't shake the deep fear I was having. I was laying down when suddenly the whole room was ice cold. It was as if time had stopped. I was unable to move as footsteps lurked through the house. This deep vibration sound was echoing through the entire house. In an instant, the tension broke and I lay there wide awake watching the sun rise in the morning. My brother was with me, as were 5 other people. To this day, this experience changed my entire life. Oddly enough, this is one of many events where I truly had to question my reality. It's currently 3:07 a.m. at the time I'm writing this. I've been on this sub for a long time. I always wake up at around 3 a.m. every night. A habit I have is to go out on the balcony and meditate. If the skies are clear, then I will look up at the stars for a bit before going back to bed. I live about 20 minutes away from an airport, and I know what an airplane looks like as they fly by my house on a regular basis. At times when there is an air show, I can see jets from the local CAF detachment doing runs just across where the airport is located. Tonight it was damn hot in my room, so it was a good idea to go cool down outside on the balcony. Today, the skies were clear and oddly bright. Maybe due to the city lights reflecting on low clouds, it was clear enough to see the Big Dipper. I was only trying to find the Little Dipper as I had never tried to look that hard at the sky before. While trying to look for the North Star, something caught my attention real quick. The bright but not too bright yellow light trying to blend in with the stars was moving at God knows what speed in odd forward pulsating patterns shifting from side to side at times. I laughed at how random this was and at the fact that it was definitely not a plane, as I have seen planes fly by and they have a different route, let alone why would a plane fly that high at that altitude and that fast if it was only going to land at the airport or crash into some poor guy's farm. I never thought I'd see the day that I'd see something supernatural like that. My mom, while driving to work, has told me about things in the sky flying like that, but she only told me that they were probably just shooting stars. I don't expect any of you to believe me. This sub, from what I have read from other Redditors on this sub, has described this community as toxic at times. I only share this encounter with you all because I thought to myself that there was no one else I'd rather feel comfortable sharing this stuff with. People think of us believers as crazy. I'd say they were just people with tales of mysterious events who needed to write this stuff down. A quick summary of today's events: pulsating zigzag object with bright enough yellow light that you can see it. Assumably, from looking at it for a couple of good seconds, it appears to be its boosters or thrusters or something of that sort. The whole object was a glowing light, like the Foo Fighters people have talked about. I could see it flying so damn oddly. Pulsating is the best way I can describe it. It looked like it was stuttering or struggling to push forward. It is moving faster than anything I have ever seen before in the air. I tried to guess what shape the front could have been by the shape of the yellow light. If I had to make a hella rough guess, I'd say triangular because a typical flying saucer wouldn't be able to carry any thrusters that would look like that and fit into the disc-shaped geometry. I lost sight of it when it went past the roof of my house. I hope you guys like this story and feel free to share your thoughts and questions. I'd love to hear about similar sightings. For years, I have kept this story under wraps or told it as it comes up, but I had direct contact with an interdimensional being with another person. So, as the story goes, I was with my girlfriend at the time in a relatively remote region in the Colorado Rockies near the Wyoming border. We had a battery-powered speaker in the middle of a circle playing music, and we were dancing around in a counterclockwise fashion, laughing at the winds coming in from the west. In one moment the music played, in the next it was in and out static. "Oh, the phone is too far from the speaker," I thought. I looked down at it right next to the speaker. I breathed out and the air got super dense. It felt almost dense enough to swim through. I looked up and saw my girlfriend's face ghost white. My jaw dropped lower than I thought possible, and she pointed to the middle of the circle and exclaimed, "What is that?" I panned upwards and saw a rainbow-ed translucent thing standing before us. My jaw dropped too. What happened next I'll never forget. The most organic low to high-pitched clicking growl sounded from the speaker, like it was using it to communicate. We both froze in absolute shock and everything stood still. The birds, the wind, the trees, everything felt like it lifted up into a single moment, and there was no time at all. What seemed like an eternity ended, and the shape of it collapsed on itself and disappeared, with the music starting again from the speaker. I told you they were here," I exclaimed to a still shocked woman. We looked up and saw a bright green orb in the sky spiraling into the clouds, taking the shape of them with it, like it was leaving this space into another. And like that, it was gone. I can still hear the growl and have had other experiences both sober and on substances of intelligence, beings, etc., but this intimacy will never be this close again. Okay, so for context, this occurred in 2009. I was 17 years old, a senior in high school in a small rural South Texas town. I was on the school bus with about a dozen other students. We were returning home from an academic competition a few hours away on a Saturday. So this wasn't a bus full of uneducated people or anyone on drugs or anything of the sort. It was the top 5% of my class and the accompanying chaperone teachers. We all saw the same things and had nothing to gain by lying. This was also before smartphones were a common thing, so other than my cheap 2-megapixel flip phone and my friend's iPhone 3G, we did not have the best options for taking photos or videos of this. The sun was already setting. I was talking to my friend and his girlfriend, who were sitting in the seat across from mine, and behind them was a large empty field. I think it was used to grow cotton. I was the first one to notice a large object floating in the middle of the field. I pointed out to my friends. We spent a good few minutes trying to determine what it was. The light was dimming from the sunset, but we could see a large black triangle floating about 300 yards away, about 100 feet off the ground. It had 4 lights, one on each corner and one in the middle. We all stared at it, wondering what it was. About 3 minutes in, the bus had to turn, so now the object was behind the bus. Most of the students and a teacher ran to the back to continue viewing it. The object was now floating closer to the bus. Imagine a kite tied to the bumper. The object was no less than 100 feet above the ground and 100 feet behind the bus. The object was about the same length as the school bus, maybe a little bigger. We could all clearly see the black triangle silently chasing the bus. Then, after maybe a minute of it trailing us, poof, it vanished. It wasn't instantaneous. It was like someone pulled the cloak of invisibility from Harry Potter over it, going from one end to the other. Or like the Predator when he cloaks, except there was no visible outline or light shimmer. We all screamed because we didn't know what to do. Here you have a group of the top students in the entire high school and the teachers that sponsored them, frightened and flabbergasted at what we just perceived. We looked around the bus. It was quickly getting dark, but there was no sign of the triangle. We were back at the school about 10 minutes after the triangle disappeared. It was already dark. No one could come up with an explanation. We still can't. We still bring this incident up to this day whenever we get together. I'm trying to get some of the witnesses on record to get and preserve a solid account of the incident. We all became believers after that point. Also, not sure if it adds credence to my story, but my father was an Air Force staff sergeant for 20 years. I spent a good chunk of my childhood on military bases. I've seen military-grade helicopters and jets up close and more closely than many other civilians. I can definitely say the object was not a helicopter or aircraft I had ever seen. My father couldn't explain it either. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, so I can't ask him any further questions about his time in the military. Also, this was less than 10 miles from the Mexican border, and while we did frequently see border helicopters in the area patrolling, this was not it. First, I'll start with the story of my stepdad. We're middle class, live in Ohio, and none of us in our family really gave much thought about UFOs or aliens' existence, although I have always thought we weren't alone. My step, he wakes up very early, typically at 4 a.m., to take the dogs out and get ready for work, and was following his typical morning routine, taking our Yorkie out one morning. While walking the dog, he said he didn't quite feel right, like there was something there observing him, but he looked around and there was nothing. He told me a few seconds after he looked around, the hair all over his body stood up and there was a giant white flash of light above him but no sound at all. He said it only lasted a few seconds and then nothing. Silence. Everything was back to normal and he was with the dog on the sidewalk a few houses down, confused about the whole experience. He came back inside, woke my mom up, and told her all about the experience and kind of laughed it off. She obviously doubted or was in disbelief, but he isn't the kind of person to just claim he was abducted or scanned or anything like that. He's a very go-with-the-flow guy, so lying about something like this is so out of character for him. He had kind of laughed the whole experience off, and to this day, he still can't really exactly say what it was. This encounter was roughly 5 years ago. I'm just now sharing it with this sub because I never knew about it. A year or two later, he was diagnosed with cancer in the throat. I don't know if this encounter had anything to do with it because he was 55 at the time, never smoked, in good health overall, so we were taken back a little by it. He's lived cancer-free for a few years now. I just wanted to share this short story and see if anyone else had similar encounters.